Hi guys, Yo-Yo from Sharp 11 Music here. After recently having transcribed this amazing solo by Marc Rousseau, who's kind of one of the most notorious examples of how to use Altissimo in a practical sense, I think it's the perfect time about how to get Altissimos in the first place. First, I wanted to make a complete video covering from beginner, how to get them out in the first place, to advanced, the advanced use and melodic application of it. But halfway preparing this video, I just noticed how much of valuable information I would have to leave out if I would have to cram it all in one video. So this first part will be mainly for people who can't yet play them. I will cover some different angles you could try out. However, for those who can already play them, it might offer some new insights into improving the basics, which in turn will improve everything up there, including your sound in the general range of the horn. If you're not yet able to get them out, let me make you very happy. Chances are pretty high you are already playing some without notice, which we will get to in a second. So there is still one question we should answer before going into the technique. For the beginners, when should you be starting practicing Altissimo? According to one of the founding fathers of Altissimo method for saxophone, Sigurd Rascher, before beginning to study high tones, every saxophonist should be able to command and control completely the attack, quality and vibrato of every tone within the normal range. While this is an excellent starting point, I think these are parameters you should be studying at any level to perfect, which makes it hard to decide when it's sufficient to call it under control. So let me narrow it down to at least a few years of embouchure development, let's say about 3 years of regular playing, and technically controlling the complete range of the horn, which is roughly from the low B flat to the high F onto the side keys. I would say this could be achieved in 3 years of regular practicing. From that stage on, practicing Altissimos makes a lot of sense anyway, because all the parameters required for a good sound are exactly the same as for producing Altissimos. And as we know, sound is paramount, or parasound. So let's see what these parameters are to get Altissimos and a good sound. A proper embouchure, throat cavity, and airflow, a proper airflow or a proper support from your diaphragm. First, you will need more pressure from the lower lip. This one is rather straightforward because, as you know, in the normal range of the horn, for the lower notes you need a little bit of less pressure than for the higher notes on the horn. This is why you only can play nicely subtone on the lower part of your horn, which is with loose lips, an airy sound, and your embouchure needs to be tighter for the higher notes. So here is where people already produced mostly an overtone that they aren't aware of. Ever played a high F with the front F key? Then you have played your first Altissimo. As you will notice, this F sounds quite different from that one with the side keys, that same F. And you will also notice with this fingering, if you don't keep a tight embouchure and good air support, you will sound like a duck that catches the cold. From this point on, a second step into the overtones is by producing an E just underneath that F by putting down your ring finger, your left ring finger. If you succeed, then try to play the E separately without introducing it with the F. There are also saxophonists who choose to use this kind of E for stylistic reasons just because of the sound of it. If it all failed, no worries, go back to the F or maybe even forgo the F by a C, then go to the front key, F, and then back to the E. On the other hand, if this E pops out right away, you could already try the next overtone that is quite similar to the tongue position of that E, which is the G. And that's being played by 1, 3, 1, 3 fingering. So first do this E, so you know the throat position for it, the tongue position, and then to this G. Try to notice how it feels in your mouth, more specifically your tongue position, which brings us to the next part, throat cavity. This one is the hardest to explain because you don't have some visual reference here, so I'll make some practical analogies here. Just like with singing, your throat needs to be in the optimal position to support the pitch you actually want to come out. At this point again we should listen to what Sigurd Rascher has to say about it. Without exception, the student who fails to comprehend the prime importance of the development of the inner ear, the tone imagining concept of tone, also fails to produce, let alone master, the high register. On the other hand, the student who realizes that mind, concept, and body, embouchure, and fingering must work together will in due course succeed. The key word here is tone imagination. We want to anticipate the tone we want to play. This is also an excellent sound exercise. An example of this in a normal register would be that you play a D, like a middle D with the octave key, and then we try to play a fifth interval. So you start with playing a D, and then you simulate in your head, or you sing, that's also a good way of simulating, the A before you play the A, and then afterwards you actually play the A and you see if you had the right pitch in your mind. So the real checkup, if you imagined it well, is you play the D, then you imagine the A, and then you play the A. And if you're playing this A and you think you imagined it well, then you go back to the D, but you keep the mouth position and the throat position of that. Then it will not flip back to the D, but it will stay in the overtone on that D of A. Let me show you. Like that. This is a very basic introduction in the Sigurd Rascher method, and he expands on this a lot, but that's probably for one of the next parts when we do this also with the overtones. But this is absolutely the base of a good sound and Altissimo. So how does this apply to Altissimo? In two ways. First, you could try the exact same interval, but then one octave higher. So you would play a D. And then the overtone already would be a high A, and the fingering for that would be 2, 3 in the left hand, 1, 2, 3 in the right hand. This is also one of the easier Altissimos to get, so if you never got an Altissimo, try for this one. This one pops out the most easy normally. Secondly, Rascher continues this principle with the overtones on the low notes, which is keeping a low note, for example the B flat, the very lowest note of your horn, and then producing the overtones on that note. So that would mean if we play a low B flat, then in the overtone series the first thing we get is the B flat above that, an octave, then octave plus fifth, so the F above that, then 2 octaves, so the B flat above that, then the D above that, the F, the A flat, and then we are again at B flat. And that's plenty of first overtones. We will keep it more simple in the beginning. First, let's try the first 2 octaves. So you only play a B flat fingering and you start with a low B flat, and then you try with your mouth cavity and with your throat position, your tongue position is actually more appropriate to influence the pitch to flip into the next overtone. So that's the first part, and then let's keep it there. If you're a beginner, maybe even that high B flat could be a a hard one to find. So if you have already hard time with this, which is by the way a hard exercise to execute very well, so there's no problem. I would say that you have to adapt your tongue position to get the right pitches. The best analogy here is actually, I hope you can whistle. Most people can whistle, and if you whistle and you try to make a glissando, doesn't have to be big, but just I'm going to whistle. It's very funny to do in a video, and then just go up and back down. I'm really not a good whistler, as you can hear, but I can let the pitch go up and back down. And if you do the same, you can feel your tongue, actually more the back of your tongue, moving forward and a bit up when you go higher, and move backwards and a bit down when you go lower. And this is exactly the kind of positions which you have to experiment a bit with. It's all with like slight nuances for every different overtone there. If this all works for you, the next stage is to do it all legato. That's way more difficult. So take a deep breath because you want to do it legato, and then you go to the next overtone. You just wait and move your tongue position until it flips into the next one, sit on that one, and then you try to flip it to the next one, and so on. So that's still the first 2 octaves. You will find that this is mostly already more difficult. Next, third step would be make some little exercises with it. So now we always did like root, then second or first overtone, second overtone. Maybe skip one and try to aim for first the F, go back to the B flat, then skip that F and go to the B flat above that. Like this. If this all works, you could go also on and try to expand, and then you already get into the Altissimo. So from that B flat where we ended, then we have still the D, the F, the A flat, and then the B flat in overtone. So and don't worry too much about intonation. It's actually pretty normal. It would be weird if it would be very good in intonation, because overtones are not as exact as the tuning on a piano. So don't worry about that. I also should mention that it's quite common that people actually have the most trouble with the very first overtone, this first octave, rather than sometimes the F above that or the B flat even above that. This was for me also one of the most difficult overtones. I could play a F, a B flat, a D even above, but that B flat, to find that spot on was way harder. And I had actually a pretty amazing teacher in the conservatory, a German teacher named Claudius Falk, who's an amazing tenor saxophone player. And he said to me in one of the first lessons, "You are missing the first overtone in your sound." And I wasn't sure what he meant with that. And he said, "Let's play the overtone series." And then yes, I would skip like directly from no B flat to the F. And it was really hard to find that B flat in between. If you've tried all these things and you're still not able to play them, no worries. Not all areas are covered yet, and there are still some setup issues I will address towards the end of the video. But first, the next thing to mention is airflow. With airflow, I mean a proper air support. So if you've been following lessons, I'm sure your teacher will have mentioned breathe low and support with the diaphragm. But how to activate that diaphragm is for the most people actually pretty abstract. Here are a few sound exercises that you could try to activate it. The flute exercise. This is actually an exercise I took from classical flute players, and that's playing a scale, for example, and you attack every note just with the air and not with the tongue. So that's very important, and then you will need a proper support. Yes, it sounds funny, but you will notice to get a sound in the first place, you really need the support from your abs and your diaphragm here. The next one is the t-shirt exercise. So the goal is to maximize your resistance. So we will put a t-shirt in the bell and really try to make it compact, very compact, so no air can come through, and you put it in the bell. Then we put down all keys, so that means play finger low, B flat, and then yes, you want to blow into it and try to blow all your air out as fast as you can. And you will hear a fuzzy overtone. That's pretty normal. It sounds awful, but you will feel that the diaphragm starts burning. And do this for 5 times and you will notice that this is really intensive already. I will do one as an example. Yes, it doesn't look pretty, but you will start to feel it burning here, and it's kind of like a gym for saxophone. So you do 5 reps, I would suggest, certainly in the beginning, or 10 if you're able. Really push out all that air as fast as you can with the resistance. Then you will notice if you put this thing back out of the bell that it really opens up, your diaphragm is under tension, so you will benefit still in the minutes just after doing this. Really try this and leave me a comment if it worked. So far with all my students, I did this so far, they like this exercise the most because you can really feel it. Now, besides the right air support from the right muscles, it's very important to keep that air flowing evenly throughout playing. So you need to develop independence of the tongue and the airstream. The air must be moving continuously all the time, even when you're starting and stopping new notes with your tongue. If you start putting air for each individual note, your sound will sound weak and unsupported. So for this you can practice double notes scale-wise, and you just interrupt the air with a little push of the tongue to make that second note appear, that double note appear, instead of interrupting the airflow. You keep blowing basically, and there is just a subtle tongue just tipping the reed very politely. The goal here is to get it smooth without interrupting the airflow, not to play fast double notes. Don't get carried away with speed, guys. So at this point the video is already becoming much longer than I intended, but I'll cover some other areas in next ones to come. Like for example why the Altissimo G is one of the hardest despite it being the kind of the lowest Altissimo, or what the fingerings for that I like to use, which are by the way also different on alto than on tenor or on baritone. And some advanced overtone exercises that the likes of Michael Brecker like to do, as you can hear by the way in how he developed like the alternate fingering stuff. It's closely linked to the exercises of Sigurd Thrasher with the overtones. Let me close with a few brief mentions of some common pitfalls. Overdoing the embouchure pressure. While you definitely need a little bit more of pressure, a lot of people overdo this, probably to compensate for the other 2 factors, throat cavity and air support. Have a quick look at the Dutch classical saxophonist Raaf Hekkema, who goes effortlessly high with barely moving his jaw. And in the same category falls putting your lower lip a bit further on the heart of the reed to make it pop out easier. Again, short term this helps, but you're overcompensating for the other areas. The Altissimo G tends to be one of the hardest ones to get. This is certainly not only you, this is quite common actually. Then there is the setup. There are certainly certain saxophones that tend to support the Altissimo way better than others. If you tried everything, you might want to try it also on a different instrument. My personal experience is that older horns tend to support it a little bit less than the newer ones, but that being said, don't buy your instrument on the base of Altissimos, but rather on the base of a good sound, good intonation and proper response. This is also true for mouthpieces. Generally metal or the alike mouthpieces tend to be a little bit harder for the Altissimos than rubber or ebonite. This is a Embouchure metal one. I had also the rubber diamond inlay and I was more comfortable playing them on that one. But again, don't choose your mouthpiece on the base of Altissimos, but rather on response, intonation and the sound in the normal register. If you're still watching by now, thank you kindly for the view, and if you have any questions at all regarding this, please let me know in the comment section below. If you would be interested, there is coming a Sharp 11 electric band album up pretty soon, and there are plenty of Altissimos in that one, so you can follow us on Instagram to hear what it's about and what we are doing in between making all these YouTube videos. I've been Jorg from Sharp 11 Music and see you next time.